Hello and welcome to Follow the Leader, a podcast discussing leadership and what makes someone a good leader. Are they born or are they made? Leadership qualities and more. This is a podcast. You want to subscribe if you want to be a better leader. Hello everyone and welcome to Follow the Leader. I'm your host, Eli Mandelbaum, and this is a podcast about leadership and what makes one a good leader, if they are born or made. In Follow the Leader, I interview a variety of leaders to understand how they became the leader they are and what makes them effective. In this episode, we are speaking with Arsen Ostrovsky, an international human rights lawyer and executive director of the Israel Jewish Congress, an Israel-based NGO serving as a bridge between Jewish communities in Europe and Israel leaders and officials, while supporting the Jewish state around the world in the fight against anti-Semitism, BDS, and delegitimization. Arsen has testified and spoken in support of Israel before the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, United Nations in New York, the European Parliament, the Knesset, and many high-level forums in Europe and the United States. If you haven't realized, he's done a lot. He's considered an expert on anti-Semitism and BDS, as well as in international law and Middle East foreign policy. Behind all of Arsen's actions is a deep sense of Zionism and commitment to advocating for Israel and the Jewish people. Lastly, in 2012, Arsen, originally from Australia, made Aliyah from New York. And on top of that, I started following Arsen on Twitter, and it really, as you know, I would say, opened my eyes a lot to what I need to do as a better person to fight BDS and all the naysayers of Israel. Arsen, welcome to the show. I hope I covered everything. There is a lot in there. If not, you could fill in some of the blanks on your background.
Thank you for having me on. You've definitely covered a lot. There's a few other things, but you've definitely covered a lot of it, and it certainly has not been a dull moment or a quiet moment since the day I stepped off the plane and made Aliyah. That's for sure.
So why don't we start there, right? What were you doing before you made Aliyah? Like, were you as active as you are now? You know, why don't we start there?
Look, I definitely wasn't active as I am now. For me, it was a process of evolution, I suppose. My family originally were from the Ukraine, from Odessa. So we left when I was very little in 1987, and we went to Australia. So I grew up in Sydney, had a fantastic life. Look, we left because, we were Soviet Jews, and everyone knows, how difficult it was. And we found a home, found a refuge, opportunity in Australia. So I had a fantastic life growing up. But I was also a little bit detached from Jewish life. My parents, my family were very proudly Zionist, but they also knew what anti-Semitism was like. And so in many ways, they wanted me to blend in like everyone else. So I had every opportunity in life. And but for me, the turning point was around 2002 when, if you remember, the Jewish journalist, American journalist, Danny Pearl, writing for the Wall Street Journal, he was covering Pakistan, and he was taken by the Pakistani Taliban and executed live on camera. And his famous, very famous, very deeply jarring last words were, "My father is Jewish, my mother is Jewish, I am Jewish." And that really flicked something on in my head, and it got me thinking, what does it mean for me to be Jewish? What does it mean for me to be Zionist? What is a Zionist even? How does Israel fit into all this? So, it really led me into a path of, I suppose, self-awareness, education, learning about my own identity, our family history. Mm-hmm. And, I suppose to cut a very long story short, I went on birthright. In 2003. I thought I'd wait until it was peace and quiet here.
Was that your first time?
That was my first time.
First time.
And it was, I thought I'd wait until it's all nice and peaceful. But and I said I could be waiting for a while. So I went in the peak of the second Intifada. Mm-hmm. But I knew, from the moment I stepped foot that, this is a deeply, deeply special, unique place. And I felt right at home. It took a few more years before I got to the stage where I could actually make Aliyah. I did the good Jewish thing and finished my law degree, practiced as a corporate litigation attorney in Australia for many years. I went to Israel on a Massah program in 2009, which only, for me solidified my connection to this land. But the time I made Aliyah, I was immediately before then, I was actually working in New York as a research fellow at a think tank, and my focus there was really on the United Nations and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But the whole time it was, for me, I suppose, just a transit stop as on the way back to Israel. So for me, when I stepped off that plane, in many ways, through Nefesh B'Nefesh, for whom I'm also tremendously grateful, and now also serve on the Nefesh B'Nefesh board here in Israel, helping others realize their dreams. But for me, that day I stepped off that plane and made Aliyah, it wasn't as if my dream had come true, which it did, but it was in so many ways just the beginning of my dream.
No, it's funny because I say that to myself. My wife doesn't like it when I say it, but my dream, my bucket list goal before Aliyah was to make Aliyah. And the problem is when you make Aliyah, you have to come up with new goals because you're here, right? So you have to say, what are you going to do here? And but before we get into what you're doing now, taking a leadership role is never easy. And it seems like before the turning point, like again, your 2003 birthright trip and then the Masa program, but when you were working in New York as a lawyer, did you have any, were you just like another, person just doing their job, or did you feel that you had a leadership tendency and you just not tapped it? Or as it is now, it's just you became a de facto leader just because you're out there and people follow you, and now again you're leading the Israel Jewish Congress. Like, how did that happen?
Look, maybe in some ways stumbled upon it. I don't know if I would necessarily classify myself as a leader. That's, it's very humbling, but I think that's more perhaps, for others, or as, Golda Meir once famously said, don't be so humble, you're not that great. Very wise woman. Look, you made an interesting sort of analogy, and I can tell you, before I moved to New York, I was working as a corporate attorney in Australia, and around 2009, we had won a huge, multi-million dollar precedent-setting case. And I went home and rested and thought, tomorrow it's going to repeat. And then again and again and again. But at the same time, it was also if you remember the flotilla, the Mavi Marmara flotilla. And even in Australia, it became a massive issue. There's a lot of protests, to condemn, to attack Israel. And in the space of 2 days, with the State Zionist Council, with whom I'm actually also the Israel Affairs Director for the Zionist Council of New South Wales. So even though I'm not living in Australia anymore, still very much, Australia still has a very deep and important place in my heart, and I'm still doing a lot of things to try and sort of strengthen that relationship, which for me is also very critical. So at that time, 2009, together with a few other people, we immediately, literally sprung to action and, organized. Even in the community, there was a debate: how do we respond? Public, not public. What do we do? So we organized a massive rally with several thousands of people within 48 hours to come out and show their support, the solidarity with Israel, with the Jewish people, and during this difficult time. And when I came home from that, I thought, wow, you know what? That's something meaningful. That's something that's really, to me, important. And for me, the real sort of difference, I had living in Israel, being part of life here, I always thought that, I have a deep appreciation and respect for those in the diaspora. Do amazing, tremendous things, necessary, critical things to support Israel, to strengthen the bond. But for me personally, I decided, this is sort of the real turning point. I could either watch everything happening here as an outsider, or I could be here, I could be part of the change, I could vote, I could speak, I could be involved in all aspects of society and things that truly, really, really matter for me. And being here now, it's this incredible, I try to explain this to people, there's a sense of vibrancy and meaning and life and purpose, and for me it's something deeply important.
So I always go back to the point that a lot of people ask me, what are the things you like about Aliyah? And there are a lot of them. But one of the things I really find it different that you don't get in the American community, or probably the Australian as well, is you don't feel part of an am. You don't feel part of a nation, right? You're your own silos in each community. I live in Teaneck. I have my shul. I have my schools. Here, something happens, you really feel it as a nation, right? You feel, and it could be good or bad. You feel it. Even, and it's something that I always find, one of the amazing things is, right, in America, Australia too, you have all the happy holidays and Christmas, and here it's like Shabbat Shalom. I mean, you feel much more of part of an Am, and that's for me is that aspect, that comfort, that ability.
I agree completely. There are Jewish holidays that when I was living outside of Israel, I respected, I understood, appreciated, but didn't quite have, and it didn't strike an emotional chord. But again, it's one of those things that once I moved here and I'm living here, I understand, and I feel that all these holidays, at the end of the day, they're tied to our connection to this land, to thousands of years of connection, to this land and this country and this people. The other example I'd give is 2012, a few months after I made Aliyah, we had, of course, the war with Hamas in November 2012. I found myself in a bunker, in a shelter in Sderot at the time, and the guy next to me asked where I'm from. I said, from Australia. He said, "You're probably really regretting now making Aliyah, to go from Sydney, where my biggest concerns were, like which pub do we go to, or which football team do we watch?" But I responded, "Absolutely not. This only reaffirms my decision, because this is my country and this are my people, and I'm going to be with them when they're under fire, and I'm going to be with them when we are rejoicing and celebrating and happy, because at the end of the day, as you said, we are one people, and it's one community, one nation."
So on that note, this is an Aliyah pitch for those listening. I'm just saying, I think between myself and Arsen, we are very pro Aliyah. So if you want to come home, you speak to us. We're happy to help you out.
Speak to us. Our connection, nefesh b'nefesh, with pleasure.
It's not a problem. We'll even bring, again, a shout out to Hillel Fold. If you're looking for a job, we'll hook you up with Hillel
or somewhere to eat.
But let's keep moving though. So it's interesting you're saying, so you organized that rally and that really struck something in you. So you make all these. So how then did you start really getting more involved? And we're going to talk a little bit about your digital presence, because it's really strong. I mean, and not only that, but you are taking all your talents that you have outside of the digital world, your debate skills, etc., and you bring it there, and you don't back down from anyone. I mean, you are just like, and which is, I mean, it's good, because there aren't a lot of people out there that do that, right? People are timid, and people are a little bit afraid. People are like, I don't want to rock the boat, and I'm not sure if it's the right thing to say. I mean, but there is a responsibility, and again, I don't know if you realize it or not, but people definitely look to that and say, okay, what is he saying, right? What are you saying that we could then use as other people go and debate other people? I mean, so how did you start seeing that? Using Twitter as a platform to really fight the BDS and anti-Semitism?
Look, I mean, I started sort of picking up on social media as a professional tool probably around 2011. 2010, 2011. Actually, I was working in New York at the time as a research fellow, and a lot of my efforts and time were focused on the UN. The Palestinians at the time were just starting their whole pursuit of unilateral statehood. A lot of things were happening, and I understood, not everyone gets the news from the radio or through print press, which by the time it's published, it's already old press. Especially when you're dealing with younger people, and you want to reach a new audience, you have to use their language and you have to use their platforms. And these are people that are looking to social media for their news. They're looking for their social and professional cues. You're having a lot of influential people, from diplomats and government officials and media, are online, trying to make their presence heard, trying to connect, trying to present their positions. So I understood, that's a platform, that I need to be, present on. And, look, we're fighting on so many battlefronts today. We have soldiers fighting in Gaza, or terrorists in Gaza. We're fighting in the diplomatic courts. We're fighting in diplomatic circles of the UN. We're fighting in courts through lawfare. We're fighting economically through boycotts. But no less important, also fighting on the digital battlefront, which is becoming increasingly crucial. So for me, it's always been something very important, from more or less about 10 years ago. And I suppose over that time, and we can talk more if you want, sort of about building that presence, about engaging people, about representing what Israel means to me. And in when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, it's a platform for me to tell Israel's story, and what my vision and what my idea of that story is. And it's something that I think we're finding increasingly prevalent, increasingly out there, whether it's on our phones and computers at homes, people, looking for the news. When I want to find what's happening in the world, I'm not going to turn on the TV or the radio, or pick up a newspaper. I'm going to go online. I'm going to see what my friends are saying. I'm going to see what's happening on Twitter. I'm going to see what journalists are posting online before it gets published in the papers. So it's become second nature to me, I suppose, now.
Got it. And so, when did you start seeing the platform really, be effective for you as a voice? And then from there, let's transition into what you're doing now, right? So, you came in 2012, and your platform, again, you started using Twitter really as a tool in 2011. So a year is not a lot of time. So you started using it. And when you made Aliyah, what did you start doing here, right? What did you end up with? Again, it takes time to build a presence here.
I got to be honest. When I stepped off that plane, I had no job, and when I look back now, it's a while back. I'm not sure whether to laugh or cry, or I remember the conversations I had with family. I did not know what my plan was going to be when I got off that plane. I did not have a clear career path. My hero was not fantastic. It could still be much better. But I didn't know what I was going to do. But I knew that I had to at least give it a go, because I could always regret it later if I didn't. But I knew I had to at least come here and make a go at it. And I was confident enough in my own abilities and ability to, I suppose, network and find those doors that I would be okay. And I was okay. So the first, I suppose, half year or so, was a really acclimatizing. It was really trying to find my feet on the ground. I did a lot of independent works and writing, a bit of consulting. But
did you have a network here?
I had a limited network.
Okay.
I made friends over the years, but it was, I suppose, a limited network. I look now, and I'm so grateful to have so many friends and people that, not just family, but friends who mean the world to me, colleagues from the pro-Israel community, from, different circles that I can rely on, not just on a personal level, first of all, but also on a professional level when something's happening, in order to collaborate, to work together, to advance our sort of mutual goals. But I came here with literally my 2 bags, my copy of Herzl's The Jewish State, which I read on the flight to Israel, and things started falling into place sort of within about half a year. I went to Ulpan, and then I stepped into this organization I'm at now, the Israeli Jewish Congress. Wearing many hats now with the Zionist Council of New South Wales as well. I'm a human rights attorney. I do a lot of writing, a lot of whatever hat I'm wearing. And I suppose the main hat I'm wearing is always first and foremost as a family man, as a husband, as a father, which is good, because if we're going Hebrew right to left, that's first in case my wife asks. But in every hat, in every sort of position I'm in, it's all, for one purpose. It's to, out of a deep sense and, love and respect for the state of Israel, and out of my Zionist ideals. And, I want my daughter my children, I want them, my family to grow up not having to worry about rockets, not having to worry about being part of a state that's incessantly, delegitimized and attacked. So everything I do is done with my Zionist hat, because out of love for this country, this land, this people, our history. So
it's funny, that's a good segue into I was reading one of the interviews you did with the JTA, the Kol Yisrael Averim Zel Zeh, all Jews are responsible for one another, resonates with you well. And I definitely hear that. One of the things, like, it's like you are almost like a default leader without even knowing it, though. I mean, it's you're taking.
I'm going to quote that on my Twitter. I'm going to update my Twitter bio now. leader by default.
I mean, because a lot of people argue, and they, again, we had a lot of people. Again, Ari Fuld was a great one of them. Zichron Levarcha, Avi Abel. There are a lot of people here but no one has a big of a voice in a sense that you do in terms of I'm saying now in the sense of you have over 50,000 people following you, and again, given your Israel Jewish Congress, given your stature in terms of what you're doing now on the community side, there are a lot of people looking to you in terms of what you say. It carries weight. Do you feel pressure with that? I mean, do you feel that there's or are you just saying, I am who I am. I'm going to do what I believe in, and I don't really care if they follow, they follow.
I believe Churchill, I think it was Churchill that once said, reportedly anyway, that you have enemies, good. That means you stood up for something sometime in your life. I wear my heart on the sleeve. Everything I write, everything I say, I mean. It comes out of a desire to make Israel's case. It comes out of a desire to not just, and it's very important to me sort of in this dichotomy, it's not just as a way to respond to the haters, the detractors, those people that would spread lies and try and delegitimize the very essence of the Jewish state, whether it's with boycott attacks, anti-Semitism, Holocaust denial, misinformation about what's happening with the rockets. But on the other hand, it's also as a way to promote Israel. And it's critical for me. It's a platform to tell Israel's story. And we have an amazing story. We have a compelling story. We have a powerful story to tell. It's not only an indigenous people returning to our homeland after 2,000 plus years through pogroms and exile and Holocaust and anti-Semitism, but we're a people that have rebuilt a nation, rebuilt a land that our economy, our entrepreneurship, our innovation is the envy of the world. We have an incredibly dynamic cultural scene. We have musical artists coming from all over the world. We had Argentina, Lionel Messi playing here. The God himself came here to play. Apologies for your religious.
It's okay.
But we have an incredibly beautiful story to tell, and this incredible diversity of people, of melting pot, of cultures, of Jews that have come from all over the world. Literally, me from Australia, you from America, Jews that have come from Europe, that have come from North Africa, that have come from Arab countries, South America, South Africa, and we have come here because we are, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where we are, we're united by a common history, a common connection to this land, to our religion, our faith, our history, our very identity, which for me stems from here. And, when I go online always proudly as someone who is a proud Zionist, as someone who will always tell the truth, however difficult it may be sometimes, but I will tell the truth, and I will make sure that I correct those who spread lies and misinformation and try and attack us. But at the same time, I'll also try and engage with people and try and tell our story and what it means to live here and why this is such an incredible place.
So and everything you're saying I agree with. Just want to point that out.
Give it time. I'm sure we'll find some Instagram.
So with the Israel Jewish Congress, though, why don't you tell us more about it? Because I don't know how many people are familiar with it, but give a little bit more background on the objectives you're doing and some of the outreach and some of the things that you're doing. Because from combating worldwide BDS, and how do you get others to get more involved and care?
Okay. Look, I should probably say, when I'm online as Arsen Ostrovsky, and again, I wear many hats, but when I'm online, I suppose primarily I'm online in my personal capacity, but of course I do also wear many other hats. Look, with respect to the Israeli Jewish Congress, I think it's a very unique and very special organization. It was started in 2012 by a number of prominent Israelis that came together, and they found something that was missing. We have many, and this is sort of the uniqueness of it, there are many fantastic organizations, pro-Israel and Jewish organizations outside of Israel that do tremendously important work in terms of supporting Israel, in terms of reaching out to Israel. The thing is, in many ways, they look from the outside towards Israel, whereas as an Israeli-based organization, we look from Israel to the outside. We look to them. So the primary purpose, we started off as an organization to act as a bridge between Israel and Jewish communities in the diaspora, focusing specifically on Europe, because in Europe we found that there was, I suppose, a mechanism or infrastructure that was lacking. That just in America they have that presence. In Europe, it was lacking on the one hand within Europe itself to connect the Jewish communities, but more specifically also to connect those communities here with Israel. So in many ways, we've sought to act as a voice or as a partner, as a bridge to those Jewish communities in the diaspora in Europe, to bring their concerns to Israeli officials, lawmakers, leaders. We bring a lot of delegations here, whether it's focusing right now on issues of anti-Semitism, BDS, on Jewish life, Shechita, Brit Milah, on Aliyah, on all sorts of different things. But also, I suppose the other side of it is, and very critical to our work, is to support Israel and the international community. And that includes everything from going to the UN, where, I've been fortunate, or unfortunate, depending how you want to look at it, to speak a number of times on our behalf. It's working with parliamentarians from Europe. It's also, by the way, working closely with the American Jewish community and American leadership, because we also understand that, again, it goes to really the core of what we're doing. We are one people. And, it would take the view that if a Jew is assaulted or attacked in Europe, it's the same as if a Jew anywhere is attacked. And we all need to come together, because what starts off in a corner, in a pocket in Europe, will then spread like a disease, like a cancer, throughout the rest of society. So we work closely with the American Jewish community in different elements, and also with a number of American elected leaders, because our focus is mostly Europe, but not exclusively Europe, but also understanding that America also has tremendous, certainly now as well, has tremendous influence on what is happening in Israel and the effect and the how we can use that in Europe in order to help promote Israel's position and greater understanding.
So what are some of the stuff? I mean, there is a responsibility, in a sense, representing Israel to the Jewish community, right? So, are you, educating them on different aspects of life, or Israeli life, or are you trying to teach them some of the culture? Like, what are you going to the communities for? Are you teaching them what the talking points, like what needs to? I'm just trying to get a little bit more of, if again, so what the messaging in a sense.
Look, I mean, we also take the view that at the end of the day, those communities on the ground know what works best for them. I don't presume, I never would for a second, to go into any community, whether it's in Europe or America, and tell them what's best for them. They know what's best for them. We work with them to try and find a way to amplify that and to empower them, essentially. So if they say, say it's an issue of anti-Semitism or there's a BDS campaign, we ask them, okay, how can we help you? And, whether it's to bring Israeli lawmakers and officials to places in Europe to tell that case, to tell that story, whether it's to act as a conduit for information. Right now, I'll give you a very concrete example. Right now, we had last week we had the rocket bombardment. And, we also had communities and friends and allies, not just Jewish pro-Israel groups in Europe as well, Jewish communities especially, asking, what can we do? You stand with us. We want to stand with Israel as well. How can we help? So, it was an opportunity to convey information to them, tell them what is happening here on the ground, so they can go and make the case for Israel in their own language and in their own way to their own communities and their own leaders and their own parliaments. But we can help provide them those tools and that real-time information and help sort of equip them in order to make that case. But then they will make the case in their own way because they know how to do it best. But we can help them in terms of to get to that stage. And
which is, again, that's good to know on that side. And what's your reach been? I mean, so you started in 2012, now, we're 19 now, over the time, has your reach grown? I mean, and how do you get it out there, right? How are you building on top of it? How many people are working with you in the Israel Jewish Congress?
Look, our reach, definitely over the years, it's definitely grown. One of the things people ask, how many people do you have working for you? Assuming there's like a team of in the dozens and dozens and dozens. We're a relatively small team, But that said, we have a fantastic team and leadership that's, committed to the organization, that are passionate, they love Israel, that understand the importance of what we are doing and working, not just with Jewish communities but pro-Israel allies, in order to convey the message about the difficulties, the struggles they're facing, how we can help them, and why it's important for people in Israel to pay even greater attention to what is happening beyond our shores. It's not just the diaspora, it's not just North America, which is the largest outside of Israel. There's also a very large community in Europe, which is not homogenous either, that's yearning to be heard, that's yearning for our help, and to be a part of the broader community. So it's important to also get their messages. I can't give you numbers in terms of our reach as an organization, but certainly it's quite extensive across most, if not I'd say all, Jewish communities within Europe, I would say, certainly, and very many pro-Israel allies as well, because we understand at the end of the day, when we want to make the best case for Israel, we need to work and help empower those that do support us. And I don't for a second believe, it's very easy to fall back on the belief that certainly in Europe that we're like a fish at sea, that we're alone, and it can seem that way, and it can be very challenging sort of perception of Israel and Europe. It's a very strained relationship in many ways, but I can tell you from the number of times I've been there, the number of people that we've brought from Europe, Jews, non-Jews, politicians, students, you name it, that have tremendous support and appreciation, love for Israel, understanding the challenges we face. But it's a way of we need to find a way to to amplify those voices, to help them make that case. So they need to be heard, and we need to do a much better job here in Israel in order to help them make that case.
So I want to get off a second on a little bit of a topic, right? So given what you're saying, I mean, what is your attitude towards again, coming from the States, one of the biggest places where things are getting rooted in anti-Semitism is really college campuses. Mm-hmm. Have you thought about making more? And I know there's a lot of organizations out there, but a lot of them, are timid, afraid. They don't want to be preyed on by people in the BDS movement or anti-Semites, etc. Do you feel, or do you think there's an opportunity for you to take some of that? Just what you're doing with the communities and trying to empower, because what you're doing is really empowering people, empowering communities in a sense. And because again, like, you look in New York, right, Columbia University, which is literally in New York, is probably the biggest Jewish community outside of Israel, and Columbia University, which is a lot of Jews go there. It's a I would say rampant anti-Semitism and the BDS, which is really synonymous with anti-Semitism, there. Do you feel that there's an opportunity, or do you feel that there is not a purpose, but more of a need for you to go there? Like, do you compel? Like, do you think you have something to offer them and say, let me see if I could work with some of these, the people on the ground already there, and give them more tools to combat this?
Yeah, look, first of all, I think what's happening on campus is incredibly, certainly in America, is incredibly disturbing. I have a good friend who's a Israeli Muslim journalist, and he says that he sometimes feels more concerned speaking on campuses in the US than he does interviewing Islamic Jihad leaders in Gaza. It is very disturbing. I hear so many stories of students who feel they're being intimidated, who feel that campus authorities are letting them down, they go to political science classes and the teachers are openly hostile, and if they dare to speak up, then they either get knocked down or their grades threatened to become reflected in that. Mm-hmm. What's one of the biggest dangers, I think, is that it will force Jewish students to be less Jewish, because at the end of the day, I went to university, lived on campus because I wanted to study. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to be harassed or assaulted or having to go through mock checkpoints and the like. I think there's a real threat, and I hope it doesn't come to this, but where Jewish students will say, you know what, I don't want to be involved. Leave me out of this. So they just sort of step around that.
But that never works. I mean, we've seen that. You can't just. I mean,
you can't avoid it.
You can't. I mean, that's the whole thing. You can't avoid it. I mean, again,
you can't avoid it.
You have to know your history because we've tried
absolutely.
that. You can't. There's no way you could hide as much as you want. You could suppress it as much as you want. You don't. But people will still know that you're Jewish, and they'll come after you.
And look, at the end of the day, these are the people that today's students are tomorrow's leaders.
Correct.
They are the ones that become elected officials, leaders in industry, and CEOs of companies. So these are the people that are, going to be making decisions into the future. So it's, I think it's a critical battlefront. It's probably one of the most important ones because at the end of the day, what are we talking about? We're talking about the future generation, not only of Jewish students, because we want them to be closer to their Jewish identity and supportive of Israel and Zionism, but also talking about those who would seek to attack and assault these very same principles, also the next generation. And it's this conflict. I think a number of very good organizations, they're doing tremendous work, not just online, but working with students and campuses in the United States, groups like Stand With Us, groups like Students Supporting Israel, who are not afraid to, who are not meek, who are not afraid to stand up to those who would, instigate mock checkpoints and Israel Apartheid Week things. And when speakers like in Colombia, for example, Mahathir Mohamad, the openly proud anti-Semitic leader of Malaysia, came just, a month ago, they will speak out against that. So, I know for a fact that for a lot of these students, it is very difficult. It feels very intimidating. So certainly what we can do to work with some of these organizations that are already on the ground to help support them, certainly from Israel, and in terms of what they're doing and their efforts there to get information to them. It's not only just getting that information, which is important, but it's also conveying that. And when you speak about Israel advocacy, and it's certainly something very important to me, it's first of all, we need to know what's going on. We need to know the facts, we need to know the history. But we also need to know how to convey that. How do you convey that to someone on the left, to someone on the right? How do you convey that to someone who already supports us versus someone who believes in a one-state solution, who says they love Israel but don't like the settlements? How do you make that case? So it's something that we also need to be training, certainly the younger generation, not everyone essentially, but especially the younger generation, those who are on campus, how to make that case, I suppose, in the most effective way. And
so, again, do you give them literature? Do you videos? I mean, how, again, it's, part of it, a lot of it, one of the best ways to defend it is to actually be versed in it, right? Is not to be ignorant, right? You got to understand what you're talking about. You got to understand that, are you giving them, have you created, materials for them?
Absolutely. We've done that. We've worked with different organizations already on the ground, a few that I mentioned. I'll give you a few concrete examples. In Europe, we've taken, we took a group of university leaders from across Europe to Auschwitz. A number of them who, and not Jewish, number of them who'd never been there. And, one of the first things one of the student leaders did from one of the Eastern European countries when he came back on campus, passed a resolution on anti-Semitism. Directly, that was within weeks of him returning from Auschwitz. He said, wow, it sort of puts this in context. So we want to do something. We have a program where we work with younger student leaders, like from high school age. We help support them, for example, when they go overseas debating. And they're, it doesn't matter at the end of the day, and it's a reality of also living in Israel, that when you go overseas, you become an ambassador, for better or worse. You're an ambassador for the state of Israel.
Yeah.
So you have to know what is happening. So we've taken them on different countries across Europe after working with them here in Israel, helping train them in advocacy, in history, in Zionism, in communications, and let them work with them once they go overseas for short periods, and when they reach out and speak out to these different communities. But it's at the end of the day, we're talking about, like I said, this is the next generation. These are not only our future leaders, but these are also the future leaders of society that would seek to take away our rights, and they would seek to attack us and deny our very sort of legitimacy. So we need to work on both fronts.
I hear that. So switching gear a second, we have a few more minutes to go here. Yeah. Is there anyone that you felt that made an impression on you to be an advocate? To be like I said, a default leader. Because again, I don't know if you ever really the leadership methodist came to you in a sense, and I view you as a leader because you're going out to the communities and you're advocating on behalf of Israel. So you are, people do listen to you and they follow you. So by that terminology, you are a de facto leader. Did someone, whether in Australia or New York, did someone really make an impression on you, saying, well, that is just someone I could go to or look up to? Besides the four people you have on your desk, right? We have Churchill, Reagan, Jabotinsky, and then you have Begin. Outside of those four.
Look, to be honest, those four, it's funny you should mention that, have inspired me in many ways. When you talk about leadership qualities, what does one look for in a leader? And, for me, and all four of them, I think, represented that, in one, they represented courage. Mm-hmm. Just a few weeks ago, we marked 30 years since the end of the Berlin Wall, and Reagan was, obviously instrumental in that. But they, all of them, Begin and Jabotinsky, they were alive during, different times. But Begin, grew up in the underground, and then he brought us peace with Egyptians. Churchill, he single-handedly stood up to the Nazis. Mm-hmm. And, these are, for me, people who had courage. But they're also people that inspire. That's another virtue that's incredibly important for me in leadership, to be able to and look up to people that inspire. You don't want to tell someone how to do X, Y, or Z. You want to work with them to empower them and to teach them how to do that so they can go ahead and do that on their own. Mm-hmm. You don't want to, I never look at myself as a manager. I hate that word. But, someone that leads, they inspire others by their actions, by their character. Mm-hmm. And, I think today we're, in this day and age, certainly in 2019, there's a real shortage, I believe, unfortunately, of people like that have that courage, that have that character, that have that ability to inspire. I couldn't give you any one person. I don't want to give any one person from my personal life because, to be honest, it was an amalgamation of many people. Okay. I've been involved in the Jewish community. I've been involved in the human rights community. I've been involved in the pro-Israel advocacy community, and a lot of these communities overlap in many ways. And I've been privileged, honestly, been truly privileged to work with so many people, look up to so many people that in their own unique ways have inspired me to learn, that have inspired me to to be the advocate that I am, to speak out. At the end of the day, people they'll ask me, if you go to the UN or whatever it might be, did it work? Did you win? I'm like, are you kidding me? Of course not. Of course we didn't win at the UN. We can't win because of pure numbers, but we have a duty and obligation to speak up. And it all comes down sort of to my Zionism, the modern state of Israel is only 71 years old. And it's not that long ago where we didn't have a voice, we didn't have a state, we didn't have independence and sovereignty. Mm-hmm. We have our voice, we have our army, we have our parliament, we have not just for me the privilege, but the duty to speak out, to make the case for Israel, to defend the state of Israel and to support the Jewish nation. So, we might not win every battle. We are winning many, many more battles. but we have a duty and obligation to speak out, to correct the truth, and to advocate for the one and only Jewish state.
Excellent. And on that note, it's really been a pleasure speaking with you. I really, definitely insightful, definitely inspirational. And I thank you for your time. I'm Eli Mandelbaum, and this is Follow the Leader. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your friends about it as well. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Lastly, don't forget to check out my other podcast, Plugged In.